Hey guys, it's your
Big
buddy
Ice and
Drew
Ghost.
and Harry, the Living History's Mysteries and Three-Eyed Raven Productions. Man, there's no better way to spend an evening than sitting next to a fire, having a drink with a friend and telling stories.
Did I ever tell you about the ancient laws in
Really?
Ireland? The judges, the peacekeepers, the lawyers.
Well, I'll tell you what, instead of just telling me, won't you tell them too? Check this out, guys. You're going to like this.
In pagan times, the Brehons were both priests and judges. The Brehon was then regarded as a mysterious, half-inspired person, and a divine power kept watch over his pronouncements to punish him for unjust judgments. Every great family of the Western Islands kept a Druid priest, whose duty it was to foretell future events and decide all causes, civil and ecclesiastical. The Brehon was an expert in the hallowed traditional law and the obscure technical language in which it was enshrined. To act as judge in disputes submitted to his arbitration, provided he was qualified to do so, was but one of his functions. In Irish Druids and religions, it says they promulgated the laws in a kind of recitative or monotonous chant, seated on an eminence in the open air. The Irish for judge is Brehon, from which we get the anglicised Brehon. A Brehon or Brehon means someone who is an expert, commentator, interpreter, educator and preserver of the laws and customs of the early Irish people. First and foremost, a Brehon or Brehon was someone who adjudicated over disputes and legal proceedings. But in a looser sense, a Brehon was an expert in the laws and customs, the equivalent of a solicitor or barrister, or even an academic commentator, which we have today. There was a point in early Irish history where the functions of a Druid, a bard or filly or one of the poets, and a Brehon or judge could be performed by one man. But these later separated into three distinct offices with distinct functions. So we had the Druids or the Dree, who were responsible for the functions of religion and spirituality. We had the poets or the Filly, who were responsible for poetry and history. And then we had the judges or the Brehon, those who were responsible for law and justice. Christianity is officially said to have arrived in Ireland in 432 AD with the coming of St. Patrick. And with the coming of Christianity, we gradually see the decline of the significance of the Druids. And many of the Druids became Brehons or Filly, and a lot of them actually went into the priesthood and became monks and scholars. But because these offices of Druid and Filly and Brehon once came from the same source, we can see that they are intricately linked and overlap in some of the descriptions and their qualities. The ancient Irish judges, for example, used poetry as mnemonic devices in training their legal students, while at the same time the poets or the Filly could issue a satire which had an effect of social denunciation, the sort of social denunciation that you could also get from a judgment against you. And both of these offices were heavily based on the mastery of language and of words. In Catherine Sims' work, Poetic Brehon Lawyers of the 16th Century in Ireland, She said, "The poets taught the correct grammar and spelling of classical Irish used by the lawyers in their pleadings. Irish literature supplied a fund of past mythical judgments, customarily cited in the old Irish law tracts as precedents. Poetic utterance was seen as an invocation of divine judgment, and traditionally the early poets were said to have functioned as judges." While it's easy to say that the Brehon fulfilled the role of a judge just as we know it today, it's sort of a historical shortcut. Rather, it would be more accurate to describe a Brehon as a legal expert who could be called upon as a mediator or an arbitrator. Seamus McManus said, "Though the Brehon was but an arbitrator, so scholarly was he, so skilled in the laws and so wise and weighty his solemn judgments, that, sitting at a Dáil, where two witnesses were needed to prove a fact, his words were venerated and his awards sacredly respected, as though they were the awards of a judge consecrated to the judgment seat, and rare was it to find any person hardened enough to evade or reject them." End quote. The office of Brehon was highly regarded. Brehons retained their status and honour prize even while visiting independent kingdoms or tuas, and they were a very influential class. Brehons that were attached to chiefs were awarded lands for their maintenance. If they had a good reputation, they could make a good living from their service fees. If they became educators, in later life their pupils would have a duty to care for them in retirement. To become a Brehon, one must amass several years of diligent study and training under learned experts. As part of their studies, Brehons were required to memorize and recall huge amounts of information. Access to the legal profession was generally open to anyone with the requisite skill, ambition, and finances. However, with the course of time, custom gave way to a hereditary tradition where trades and skills were passed on to family members, and certain families came to be associated with certain professions. Sons of doctors tended to become doctors, sons of Brehons tended to become Brehons, and so on. In studying for the profession, the Brehon had not only to make himself master of the ancient legal records, and of the very complicated legal rules, the abstruse technical terms, and all of the intricate forms in which the law was purposely entangled. He must also be a genealogist, a historian, and a poet.
Welcome back. Welcome back. So you see, even back in the old days of Ireland, there was still law when the Druids were, well, the predominant religious group. You think there's any truth to the stories?
I believe the stories. I believe them all. My granny told me about them when I was a wee lad.
Who knows? Who knows?
So do you want to tell them?
Nah, you can tell them.
All
You
right.
can tell them.
Hey folks, that's all we got for you today. Like always, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. God bless you. God love you. We do. Hey, what? What?
Harry. Harry.
Back by popular demand,
The first Ghostorama of 2023 is happening Saturday, June 3rd at the Eden Springs Park, 793 M139 in Benton Harbor, Michigan. There'll be paranormal groups, Ghostbusters, spooky vendors, live local bands, an after-hours ghost tour, a killer car show, food trucks, disc jockey, and much, much more. It's all happening June 3rd, 2023 at Eden Springs Park at 793 M139 in Benton Harbor, Michigan. Check out the free outdoor market from 1 to 7 and the after-hours ghost tour from 9 to 11 p.m. From the legendary Sea of David religious encampment. It's all happening June 3rd, 2023 at Eden Springs Park in Benton Harbor, Michigan. Be there, or, well, you know.